Tonight, a chill, a rustle like autumn leaves. We speak of the true horror, not the beasts of the forest, nor the brigands of the road, but the insidious chill that seeps into your bones when you realize you are not alone. Not when you think you are not alone, but when you know it. When something watches, something waits just beyond the glass. She leaned forward, her gaze sweeping over each person, lingering just long enough to plant a seed of unease. The first tale comes from the high moor, where the wind sings songs of madness and the stones remember things best left forgotten. It concerns a young trapper named Kel, foolish enough to build his cabin on a cursed patch of land. Kael was a man of the wilds, solitary by choice, finding comfort in the silence of the ancient pines. His cabin, a sturdy but small affair, stood miles from the nearest settlement, deep within a valley shadowed by the perpetually mist-shrouded peaks. It was a perfect retreat for a man who preferred the company of wolves to men. One particular night, as the first blizzards of winter began to lash the moor, Kel was carving a new trap trigger by the light of his hearth. A soft thump against the side of the cabin, barely audible above the wind, made him pause. He dismissed it as a branch falling, or perhaps a snowdrift settling against the wall. A few minutes later, the sound came again, clearer this time. A distinct tap at the window pane, not heavy but insistent, like small knuckles gently rapping. Kel's hand stilled. No creature on the moor knocked, not like that. A prickle of cold awareness traced its way up his spine, despite the roaring fire. He told himself it was the wind, a loose shutter, anything but what his gut screamed. Someone's outside. And the thought of someone out here, in this blizzard, miles from anywhere, was far more terrifying than any bear. Slowly, Kel rose, his movements deliberate, trying not to disturb the profound silence that had fallen over the cabin interior once the tapping had stopped. He moved towards the window, his breath pluming in the sudden cold air away from the hearth. He peered through the condensation, straining his eyes against the swirling snow. Nothing, just the white, swirling chaos. Just as he was about to turn away, a new sound began, a soft, scraping rhythm against the far wall of the cabin. It wasn't the wind. It was too precise, too rhythmic. And then a whisper, so faint he thought it was the wind, but it felt closer. It seemed to come directly outside the planks of wood, a low, drawn-out hiss that vibrated through the very timber. Kel froze, a deer caught in a snare, every muscle locked, every nerve screaming. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The whisper seemed to coil around him, seeping under the door, through the cracks in the walls, filling the small space with a palpable dread. It was less a sound and more a pressure, an invasive presence. Then a shadow detached itself from the maelstrom of snow outside the window. It was tall, impossibly thin, and seemed to drink the meager light, making the glass itself appear darker. It had no distinct features, just a blurred, elongated silhouette that pressed against the pane, unmoving, watching. A soft click echoed from the front door. Kel's blood ran cold. He hadn't locked it. He never did, not out here. He always just latched the heavy wooden bar. But the click hadn't been the bar. It had been the turning of the iron handle, a slow, deliberate twist. A terrifying realization dawned on Kel. Whatever was out there wasn't trying to force its way in. It was testing the latch, testing the resolve, testing the very sanity of the person within. It wanted to know if Kel would open it. A low, guttural moan, utterly inhuman, emanated from just outside the door. It wasn't words, but it conveyed a chilling question, a hungry invitation. It stretched and warped, a sound that seemed to pull at the fabric of the mind, promising unimaginable horrors if one were to yield. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the sound ceased. The shadow at the window, elongated, seemed to stretch into nothingness and vanished. The soft thump of unseen footsteps receded into the blizzard, becoming one with the wind's mournful wail. Silence, heavy and suffocating, descended upon the cabin once more. Kel remained frozen for what felt like hours, his eyes fixed on the door, then darting to the window. The rest of the night was a blur of paranoid glances, sleepless terror, and the conviction that he was still being watched, that the thing was just beyond his sight, waiting. Kel never slept soundly in that cabin again, Ilara concluded, her voice dropping to a whisper. He boarded up his windows, nailed the door shut, and when the spring came, he abandoned it, leaving everything he owned behind. He lives in the village now, but they say a part of him never truly came back from the moor. He sees shadows in every corner, hears whispers in every gust of wind. A collective gasp rippled through the listeners, their faces pale in the lantern light. One young woman clutched her shawl tighter, her eyes wide with a fear that mirrored the others. Ilara let the silence stretch, allowing the chilling echoes of Kel's tale to settle. Then her gaze sharpened, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. That, my friends, was just the beginning. There are two more.